All right, cool. Well, welcome again, everyone, and thanks for joining another NGConf webinar. My name is Q. I'm joined today by Jeffrey, Robyn, and Sumit from Rangle.io, or just Rangle. Today, they're going to be going over the future of Angular development with the recent release of Angular 18. So, like all other NGConf events, this webinar follows the same code of conduct. I will post the link right after I finish chatting in the chat that has our code of conduct. But in short, be kind and respectful in the chat, and especially while the presenters are presenting. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and the Wrangle team will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. With that, I'll let Robyn take it away.
Hey, hello everyone. Excited to chat with you all today. So I'll give like a bit of a kind of overview of just Wrangle. We're a technical consultancy, so we help different companies to integrate or get where they need to be technically. That often involves a process, some cool new tech, and we've been part of the Angular community for since the beginning. I'm going to say Sumit's here, who you'll hear from soon, is old hat. So yeah, excited to chat. Also excited to collaborate with NGConf. I went to NGConf this past year and it was amazing. I always have a great time there. All right, so without any further ado, we will move on to chat about the Angular Renaissance. So I feel like this has been, as you can see on the slide, talked about quite a bit now. Kind of the word Renaissance put by Angular. Angular has always had a really great place, and it has been really since 1617 version 16, 17, 18 has been releasing some really groundbreaking features. We're excited to chat about them today. We're chatting about 18, but along with all of the pieces that come with that make it kind of a renaissance. So I guess without further ado, I will pass that on to Sumit, my colleague. I guess, yeah, I'll pass it on. There you go.
Okay, thanks, Robyn. So let me share my screen and then I will start. Second.
Maybe I'll stop sharing just in case.
Yes.
Oh, is it working? There we go.
Okay, awesome. And okay, so hope everyone is able to see my screen. Okay. So let's dive in everything that has been released with version 18 and all the new feature that Angular 18 provides us. Now, for everyone who has worked in Angular, knows this, that Angular from start came with a library called zone.js, which was basically responsible for triggering the change detection in the Angular itself. It worked great. As a developers, we don't have to worry about anything. Clicking on a button, fetching data from the server, everything just worked and everyone was happy. But as working on Angular and building more and more complex applications and scenarios grew, we saw some performance issues using the Zone.js library. Now, and community have been talking a lot about these, and Angular team heard the feedback from the community. And what they have been doing is they have been working on getting rid of Zone.js from the framework itself. It's a long-term goal because just changing the reactivity framework from Angular is not straightforward. Like you have to think of all the different scenarios and impacts that it could potentially have. So with version 18, what they did was they have released an experimental version of Zone.js where you can play with applications without Zone.js. So what you can do is instead of using Zone.js within your application, you can have a provider called provide experimental zoneless change detection, which will allow you to have applications run without any change detection or Zone.js within that. One other thing to remove that is using the provider, you also have to remove the zone.js polyfill from the angular.json so that it's not included in the bundle itself, and there's no polyfills.js file created. So let's see that in action. I'll go with basically the presentation and demo side by side as I go with features. So I also share the demo application with everyone at the end of the with the slides. So in the project that I have, like I have an application which is basically with the zone, and there's another project called Demo Zoneless. In Demo Zoneless, what I've done is basically uh, I have used the provider called experimental zoneless change detection, which tells this application saying, "Hey, don't use zones for change detection. Just um, work with signals or whatever." Um, so this was the first chain, and the second chain that you have to do is basically remove the zone.js from test from the we are basically angular.json architect tests when you're running the test for zoneless application, as well as from the build here, which build polyfills for. So now I've done only this for zoneless demo since it's an experimental. I don't want it to do for the whole project yet. So okay, with both of these changes in place, your application would run in a zone in without the zones. So I have that running over here. Okay, now if you see, so I have a counter, and I clicking on that counter, it works fine. So since because with the zones, you have to use signals. So for example, I created the counter signal and then created a signal over here, clicking on a button. We'll call the increment counter function, and then this will change the counter, and it will get reflected as without the zones. Angular is listening for some of the listeners clicking on the event or change of a signal property, which will basically run the change detection on the side, but not with the zone, without the zones. Now, one thing to note, if you're creating an application without the zones is now in this application, I have an increment counter and then I have a timer counter, which basically runs, which has a set interval and keeps on running on every second. But like if the time passed and I click on that, you will see that it is getting incremented in the background, but not getting reflected on the UI. And like if I click an event on the UI, which basically triggers the change detection in Angular, what it will do is it will display that timer counter. But then, so if I click on increment, which will update the signal, which will trigger the change detection, and which will also display the timer counter. So if I click here, you can see the timer, since it's running in the background and incrementing every second, it changes to this new value over here. Now, but if we want to use that, like for example, if for some reasons you have to use the set interval in your applications which are not using zones, so there are two ways to do it. Either you convert this timer counter to signal, saying, hey, this is a signal, and at the and at each interval, what you do is you set the signal value to this dot timer counter +1. And now what will happen is, since at every interval we are resetting the signal or setting a new value to the signal itself, it will basically update that. One thing I have to do is basically, since I've converted it to a signal, it's a function, so I have to call this number. And you can see that the signal value is being updated every second based on set interval. No. Let's say, okay, there's an issue and then you can't convert your timer to signal. Okay, so yeah, now it's broken again, and clicking on that, it changes. The other way you can do is basically you can create change detector reference and inject it. And on basically interval or change of anything that happens, what you can do is you can just call this dot change reference dot mark for change or detect changes based on your scenario, and then you will see that working. The recommended way is the signals. So you should use signals because it is tied to the change action cycle of the Angular itself and notifies that, where as using this change detection reference, you are forcefully doing that, which could have implications if you have a really complex application itself. Now, one other example is like, for example, if you're using an async operation within your zoneless application, then what would happen? Now, I have this function called get users, which basically does is it fetches the list of users from the server and it returns the results itself. Now there are three way. If you in the zoneless way, you can do it in primarily two different ways. One is using it as an observable, and what you can do is you can bind it to UI. So if it's an observable, it will get tied to change action cycle of Angular and it will get reflected. So as soon as you render the page, you will see it on the UI. If you try to do it in an old fashioned way the way where you have a list of users, actually, let me comment this out just so that it doesn't. Okay, now what I've done is I'm doing it in a way where I have the users list and I'm populating the users list on subscribe. And you will see that the list is not displayed on the page, but it will get displayed when I click on the button, or basically when I tell Angular that, hey, go and run the change detection cycle, and you can see it rendered over here. So now to fix this, there are two ways. Either you use the change detection reference and tell Angular, hey, okay, I'm running this async operation. I got the results, and go and run the change detection cycle itself. Or you use an observable, but since like Angular is moving to signals, what they have done is they in the Angular, while moving to signal, also created an RxJS interpolation library which allows you to convert observables to the signals itself. So what you can do is you can create, let me comment this one as well. What you can do is basically you can tell, hey, I have this observable, go and fetch the data for using this and convert it into a signal. And then you can also supply the initial value. And then it will basically, what Angular will do is it will go and fetch the list of users asynchronously and convert it to a signal. Now, since it's a signal, whenever the response of this particular HTTP API comes from the server, what Angular will do is it will set the signal value, which will in turn trigger the change detection cycle of the framework. And since it sets the signal value, runs the change detection, you should see the list of users as soon as I uncomment this and it gets refreshed, and you can see. And then, but this problem still occurs because I'm not using those signals here. And as I mentioned, Angular limits checking Angular in using the fewer triggers. There's also helps in like the performance of increasing the performance of applications, since you're not using zones, you're only relying on signals. Moving forward, Zoneless also would help developers in improving composability using the micro front ends as signals, and simplifying bundle size and simpler debugging processes as well. While also introducing this, Angular team introduced what I will say is they also added providers to test your applications using zoneless change detection. So what you can do is, when you're using configuring the test bag, you can provide that same experiment zoneless change detection to your testbed configuration and run the tests itself. Okay, now once you have like zones removed from the applications, as I mentioned, the best way to reflect changes on the UI is to use external signals. Now, over the past year, Angular team has been working on signals, focusing on the Angular's reactivity model. It helps in achieving the high performance within an applications, as you have a simpler data management flow and simplified concept. You don't have to rely on much on observables using two signal values. As signals are reactive, they always have some value and they're side effect free. So basically, reading a signal does not cause any other changes or execute any other code within your application itself. What we have seen is they are also more maintainable, because you can only set and get the basically value within the signal, so you don't have like you are not relying on any other things itself. Now, as a part of this, Angular team released three primitive signals initially, which is basically signal, writable signals API that provide updating the values directly. As we have seen, they also provided commuted signals, which are basically what it we'll see that in action in a bit. Basically, what they do is you can use a signal to get a commuted value from that, and whenever that signal changes, the commuted value also changes and reflects on the UI. And effect, which is basically when if you want to look for whenever the signal value changes and reflects, and then you want to run an operation, you can use the effects as a part of that. Now, as they worked on Angular 18, they did a lot of improvements on the underlying APIs that were for the signals, as well as introduced a few more signal APIs, which is signal inputs. Signal input is basically an input value. So initially we would use a decorator at the rate input to get the values from one component within the other component. With this new signal input, you don't have to rely on that decorator. You can just create an input uh, as a signal and use that to pass the values from one component to another component itself. Now, since they were redoing that, they also redid that at the rate output decorator. Now it's not a signal, but uh, they just created it as a function. You can say it is as a developer experience, so that you are not using decorator for one and the signal function for another one. So new output is basically a function that you can use. I'll show the examples of each of these in a bit. Then they created signal queries, allowing you to query for your view components or child components when using within a component. For example, if you want to look for a view child or content children, you can use the single queries. You don't have to rely on that @view child decorator passing in all the properties itself, as well as the model inputs for two-way binding. So let's see those in action now. So I have this demo with Angular signals. Now the first part here shows you a regular signal. So I have created, let me open the code as well. I will close this one. Go to source and browse signals. Okay. So the first is basically a signal value. What I saying, hey, I have an counter signal. Clicking on increment, just update the counter. Just showing you the functionality of the signals itself. So here I'm using what I've done is I've declared the signal counter and clicking on increment, I am basically updating the counter value and resetting, adding the signal. So if I click on that, basically my signal value changes and is reflected on the UI. Now, as an example, what is complex signal? So complex signal is basically nothing a computed value, computed signals. So here you can see I'm creating another signal called derived signal, which is computed based on the initial signal value. So here what I'm doing is I'm getting the counter value from the signal and multiplying it by 10, basically saying, hey, this is derived counter by 10x. You can do whatever you want. For example, if you have a user a signal with first and last name and you want to have another full name signal using that, so you can use that. And this is the value for the derived signal displayed on the UI, clicking on that. So basically, when I click on increment, it updates the base value as well as the derived value. Uh, then we have the view children and view child properties for other signals. So here what I've done is I've created 3 title components and using the view child passing in the element ref, what I am seeing is it is returning me the list of all the children here using this dot title. So if I go here and see in the console, you will see I have the list of 3 children, which is basically the p elements. And then same is with the profile view child component. So I have the profile since here I am only referring one profile component, I have it in here, which is app profile, and it returns me that value, and then I'm printing that. For signal inputs, so I've created this. I'll go into the app profile. Here, what I've done is basically I've created as I mentioned, you can use inputs as a signals. So I created 3 inputs and then a model email model signal, which is, so you are passing first name and last name. And also you can do is what if you don't want an input to be required, you can just leave it like that. But if you want input to be required, you can have the required field property over here. For example, in photo, I'm saying, hey, this is an input, it's not required. And to demonstrate the output, what I've done is I've created a get high five function, which is an output. So when you click on high five, you will see that output gets called, and I'm listening to the output on the demo signals page over here, which is here, and this is an output function, output signal. Again, as I mentioned, it's not an output signal, it's an output placeholder so that you don't have to use decorators at all. So you can directly use them as output. And then the last one is the model input. So what I've done is I have created an email as a model input, which is required. So a customer is we are passing it email down to the profile component, but we can also update it since it's a write it what model is a writable signal. So we will you can write it. So once I update the email, it will get reflected on the UI as well. Continuing, let's. So that was all about signals.
You want to does it make sense to, I saw a question come up. I'm not sure if you want to wait till the end or address them while they're fresh.
Yeah, given the time constraint, we should wait for the end.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So native. So the next one of the important features that Angular team released, they didn't release in 18, but it was released in 17, is deferrable views, which became stable in version 18. Now, native differential loading of the individual components was already supported using load component and load children, helping like developers to reduce the bundle size of the application itself. But if you want to reduce it further based on the components, let's say if you're a profile component or an admin component which gets rendered at later stage based on the type of the users, right? And you don't want them to load unless you know the type of the user itself. So basically deferring that. It was not straightforward and very complex to do. With version 17, they released what they did was they released the defer block, which allows users to have that. What it does is it basically defer block helps in improving the performance as it allows lazy loading of the components, which means the certain part of applications would be loaded later, so uh, you don't have the big bundle sizes loading at start. Enhance user experience. Basically, you don't have to load non-critical components at start, and you can prioritize the rendering of the critical application paths that a user will be interacting at first. It also allows you to simplify code management. As I said, like initially you would have to write a bunch of loaders and import statements just to make it work. With this, you can just use at the rate defer within your component HTML code, and it works. Optimize resource uses, as not all the components are loaded at start, so memory utilization of your application is decreased within the browser itself. So the resourcing of the application within the browser memory is optimized, and then you have also the better control over loading, like what gets loaded, what doesn't get loaded. You can have different triggers or the conditions based on what we want to load. uh, so this is an example of how you do it. So basically you add a defer block and you can have on interaction saying, hey, when do we want my deferred component to be loaded? Either I can have a trigger. uh, there are different interactions, viewport, clicking of a button, or you can even have your custom saying, hey, only trigger it when certain Boolean value or certain property gets set. You can also have a placeholder saying, hey, okay, load it later, but show the placeholder for minimum of 5 seconds. Then there's another property called loading saying, hey, uh, only okay, show the placeholder for 500 milliseconds, then start loading, and show the loading for minimum of 1 second. And if you are not able to still load the bundle of your component, show that error, saying the error placeholder or error. We'll quickly show the demo as well. So in here, if you go to deferred loading, and what I'll do is in network tab, I will throttle it to slow 3G. And if you click on fetch profile, and you can see it will get the data, and then it should load the did something happen?
Live demos never go quite right.
Yeah. 1 second, I might have changed something. Definitely loading. Oh, my bad. I was changing something there. Anyways, I will just show I did refactoring of the I will just add it static so that I'm not passing in the values. I was refactoring it, sorry about that. Okay, now it's there. Now I'll go and throttle it to slow 3G so that you will see the bundle size coming in. You see the spinner, and once my applic I have the data, it shows here. And I'll go to no throttling again. Okay, and it gets loaded. And since I'm not throttling, you won't see any bundle or placeholder here. Okay, we'll continue. Okay, the next is differential loading, since as I mentioned, was released in version 17, but with version 18, it's now stable, so you can use it in your production applications as well. The other new thing that was released in version 17 is the new control flow improvements. Like Angular team heard the feedback from the community saying, hey, we want to enhance the control flow of the application, which is easy. So they released @if, @for, @switch, which is basically the new control flow statements. Community people have been using it for a while, and with version 18, what they have done is they've done a lot of improvements, and new control flow statements are stable with version 18 so that everyone can use it uh, in your application. I do have the demo as well for that. If you want to go and check it out later, basically in here I have a bunch of @if, and then you have the rewards basically saying go and you can check it out. I will share the demo later. The next thing is the default ng content. Uh, Previously, in the previous versions, ng content was used, but anyone was not able to provide a fallback for the ng content, saying, hey, let's say I don't want to provide a content for my component, and then but you still want to display as a placeholder so that for example, you don't want to mess the UI or something. For that, there was no way you could provide the default uh, content with the Angular 18. You can do that, so you can provide the default ng content. For example, here I have that in here. And actually, I will show you in the demos as well. So here it is. So I have a dialog component. In the first demo, what I'm doing is I'm providing all the three. It's taking basically header, footer, and the contents as an ng content. In the first one, I'm only providing the head. I'm providing all the three: custom dialog for header, dialog contents, and dialog footer. And you can see everything gets rendered perfectly. In the second one, I'm just providing the contents, but not the header or the footer. So the contents get rendered. And in the last one, I'm not providing any contents, just a custom dialog and custom header, and they get rendered perfectly fine. And you can see that in example over here. one other thing is I'll go quickly. And as you can see, if you have the default header, this is the default header. If you render the header, it will just render if you don't pass in the header, it will render the default header if you have provided. If you pass in the header, it will render basically the custom app header itself in here, as you can see. One other thing Angular 18 brings is basically the unified control state change events. What it is basically, now you can subscribe to the form control events that are triggered whenever the form control changes. It's a new property that was added to a form control. It is added in the base abstract base control, so it is available to all the controls of a form or a form group if you are using. It's an observable, so it lets you to track what are the changes that happen within the form itself. You can basically subscribe. Uh, you can use the subscribe method to subscribe to the notification of all the form changes that happen, and it will basically get executed whenever an event happens. To demonstrate this is basically, if you I have this and I will go in that here. Hope you can see that. So I have basically this form which has two form controls, food name and comment, and as soon as I change something, you can see all the events that get triggered. Basically, I'm subscribing to that. So pristine value changes, status changes, all that, and since it also triggers when the form gets submitted or it gets validated. So now, since this is a required comment is required, so if I enter it, and you can see as soon as I type the first value, it did triggered the valid. Yeah, so you can see the value changes, and then the status of the form is triggered. So now I can basically subscribe saying, hey, whenever my form gets validated or the value is correct, just go and do something if you want. As well as if I now have entered everything and I click submit, and you can see it did trigger the form submit event as well. And the way you do is basically uh, so in here it's basically same thing. I'm creating a food form, which is a form group, and I'm subscribing to the events of that. Since again, for demo purposes, I'm just logging that event, but you can do whatever you want based on the type of event that is dispatched. And since, as I mentioned, it's an property in the abstract control, you can also do is this dot food form dot controls dot favorite oops controls dot favorite dot events it, and then you can subscribe to properties of each of those individual controls as well if you want to do something. Uh, Next is the new redirect command. So before the introduction of redirect command, uh, navigation for the default route was done using a URL tree, which didn't allow us to pass any of the additional properties that we want to pass when basically redirecting to a URL. With now new redirect command, you can pass additional properties saying, hey, for example, if you want to change the location or not, and, or something else, and it allows you to do that. I will quickly show that as well. So let's say if there's an error or something and I click on, you want to redirect the user, you can click here and say, hey, go now. I have been redirected to the error page itself. Now, and you can see the URL getting changed as well. But like for in certain scenarios, you don't want to change the URL for internal purposes or tracking. What you can even do is So since we are now able to pass the extras over here, you can say, hey, skip location change to true. And what it will do is, even if I am on any of the other pages, I click route redirect, it won't it won't change the URL. That was all from my side. Now I will hand it over to Robyn to go over all the other changes that have been done in the SSR world for Angular.
All right, excited to talk about Angular and SSR. So before we start, thank you, Sumit. And are there any art history buffs in the audience who recognize what era this painting on the slides might be? We're kind of talking about the Angular Renaissance, so I thought I'd bring in some of the art, use my art history degree for some good. So this is the medieval Italo-Byzantine era style of painting. It comes right before the Renaissance, which is exactly why I'm bringing it up. I want to talk about Angular and SSR. They've been buddies for a while. Angular has had server-side rendering since version 2. I'm going to chat about what that looked like for Angular before some of the cool changes and the Renaissance. So what SSR looked like with Angular was Angular Universal. So what this would do is generate static HTML content on the server. This includes all necessary markup files and to display the page. An example would be when a user visits like an e-commerce site. Angular Universal pre-renders the HTML for that page on the server, including kind of, let's say, product details, images, descriptions, things like that. So what would happen after that is delivery to the client. So that pre-rendered HTML would be sent to the client's browser. This would allow the user to see the content because the browser doesn't need to wait for JavaScript to download to execute and display this the basic HTML. And that would what that would look like is just the user seeing those product details and images without any without the delay of having to wait for the Angular application to load. Then Angular bootstrapping would happen, and this is where after the initial HTML is rendered, the Angular framework bootstraps the client side, and this would involve downloading the necessary JavaScript files, parsing them, and executing them. So this would be when your application starts, fetching necessary scripts to make pages on the interactive pieces of the page the user can interact with. And then the final stage would be client-side interactivity. So once it's fully loaded on the client side, it takes over the static HTML and converts it to a dynamic interactive application. This kind of waiting for that to happen, though, can cause a delay. So after an Angular, for example, after an Angular application fully loads, the user can interact with the buttons like purchase, see, click on the image and see that change, the image change, different product categories. But exactly, so SSR is already awesome, but you will see a delay coming from when that, seeing HTML and being able to actually interact with the page, and often a flicker. So see if we can change the slide here. There we go. Also another Renaissance painting here. We've moved from now the Italo-Byzantine era to the Renaissance. So we're chatting about when Angular kind of started to really do some the neat changes that we're chatting about today. So with Angular 17 came that improved server-side rendering. Angular 17 introduced hydration, and this is significant. We'll chat about what that means. So hydration allows that Angular to take the static HTML generated by SSR and hydrate it for full interactivity on the client side. So that interactivity can be delivered kind of all together. So Angular tries, what it does is it under the hood, Angular tries to match the existing DOM elements to the application structure at runtime and reuses DOM nodes whenever possible. So without that hydration enabled, server-side rendered Angular applications will fully destroy and re-render the DOM. So again, you'll see that flicker and kind of rebuilding. So what this does is it reduces all of the things that really matter to SEO. So to how people interact with the page. If you remember, or your website, there's a famous quote that is the longer, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but basically that seconds matter in terms of revenue. So this is super important and can also boost your SEO performance. So there we go. We're going to chat about Angular 18 and the cool things that have come with Angular 18. So we have hydration. And I think one of the only things that stopped more than, I believe it was, let's just go back actually, 76% of folks who are using SSR were the thing stopping them from getting to 100%, or the thing that really blocked more folks from using hydration, was that localization wasn't supported. So with Angular 18, we have localization supported, so we can have hydration with localization, and this allows these applications to be worldwide and accessible. So I mean, this is deeply important for any company or any website. With I'll demo actually some code, but basically this would just be adding the provide client hydration and adding passing in with I18N support. And we will now, the other cool thing that comes with Angular 18 is that I am having a lot of fun playing with is event replay. So what this is let's say there's a delay, or the end user visiting your website doesn't have the best internet, doesn't have the best Wi-Fi connection. So that hydration gets delayed. What event replay allows is the ability to store that event. So if a user clicks on a button, and then when that hydration is possible, that action is executed. So, if you click on a button and then maybe it's a 2-second delay, it happens and seems like there was no delay at all, which is awesome. And the final thing that I'm excited to chat about with Angular 18, I mean, there's more, we'll chat about a bit more, but is hydration support in DevTools. I'll also show you a bit of that with the demo that I have planned. So it makes debugging components with hydration and SSR way simpler and super helpful. So actually, maybe I will do a bit of a demo before we move to yes, let me do a bit of a demo before I move to the more changes there's other changes that have come with Angular 18. So, all right. So as Sumit chatted about, we have a repository that we've given you access to. You'll see, I wonder if I can do like a link here. Maybe somebody will edit that in. Maybe I will. So I will send the link to this particular branch. It will be merged into main, but the branch is feat SSR on the repository that we've given you. And this will allow you to see some examples of the pieces the new improvements that I've been chatting about. So in the projects folder and demo SSR, you'll see in roots, I have event replay, home, hydration, I18N, and SSR. So you'll be able to see what all of these are. So let's go to, I have it running. The command to see it running yourself, if you were to do this, is of course in the package.json and readme. I'm building demo SSR and serving demo SSR. There'll be some README notes about setting that up as well, because with localization, as I'm sure many of you know, there's a few tweaks to be made to a general Angular application. So let's open up the inspect here. So first things first, Angular DevTools. Let's check that out. So what you would do is go to Chrome extensions and download the Angular DevTool, and then you'll be able to find it here. Super cool. Recognize that this is an Angular application, and you will notice with Angular 18 the little droplets here that show what has been hydrated. So we are home. There is no hydration support for home. I will show you what that looks like. There we go. I just did hope or host ng skip hydration, sure, just to demo what happens without hydration, and also disabled SSR. So you will see that down at the home, our app home component does not have this tiny little droplet here and is not hydrated. This component, again, does not have hydration or SSR. So if we go to server-side rendering, this component has server-side rendering without hydration. How do we check this? How do we experiment with this? So if I go home, what you would do is instead of inspecting the page, you would go to view page source. And if we say, let's pull this line, copy that, and do a search here, you will not see it on this page. What this is everything that was pulled from the server on load. So that did not come from the server. So if we were to go to the server-side rendering component and do what you can see, not hydrated, but if we were to do, sorry, I should demo this here. Not hydrated even after refresh. This never hydrates. So hydration will allow for, instead of when you refresh, it won't need to kind of get a lot of the pieces that it already pulled from the server. So you will see actually in sources as network as well, you won't see any pieces being called here from the server, but you will see that in an application without hydration that is making calls to the server. So if we take this right here and we copy it, and then we open view page source, and we do a search here, control find, and we paste this in, we will see that this was pulled from the server on the initial page load. So hydration, let's check this out. So if we go to the Angular tab, Angular DevTools, you will see that there's no hydration here. It does happen. If you refresh the page, you will be able to see that this has been fully hydrated, and you'll be able to see that demo in the network tab as well. And if you go to, let's check out now localization support. So here you will see that this has localization. If we were to go to FR, you will see that we have this going on here. This is going to load. Angular application not detected. Not sure why that is. There we go. And you can see after refresh that this is fully hydrated. Super cool. So if we go to event replay, let's demo this. You know, I want to catch a Bulbasaur. So what you would do is let's go to my example here in event replay so I can kind of chat a little bit about what's going on here. I just did a little delay before the component loads so that we can do some actions and see, because it's hydrated, that these actions will play after. So you can check out this logic here. What we're going to do is refresh the page. I'm going to click catch Bulbasaur. It's not going to do anything. And then you will see Bulbasaur up here after it is fully hydrated. In the console, you will see event ignored because the component is not hydrated yet. You will see catching Bulbasaur after I've console logged whenever that button is clicked to say catching Bulbasaur. So if you did this several times, you'd see it come up. So I don't know why I didn't decide to do Renaissance painting instead of Bulbasaur, but you know, the Pokemon API, you can't go wrong. So please have some fun taking a look at this demo. The best way to kind of see the difference between these new features and the old features is to just kind of play around, see with it, see without it. But there's more. So let's go to slideshow and chat about the other cool pieces that have come out with Angular 18. Oops. So we've got Angular Dev. Oh my gosh, I actually have to demo this. I hope this actually opens it. Yes. Okay. The new home for Angular development. The website has been revamped, is beautiful, is way easier to find documentation, tutorials, even making this, had some questions, was able to find it pretty easily here. So that's a super cool. It shrank my screen. That's cool. The other piece is anyone working with Material 3. Material 3 is now stable with hydration support. In Angular 17, we had support, but without hydration. So that is super cool. We also have the automated migration to the application builder. So what that means is in Angular 17, the application builder was stable and enabled by default for new projects. Under the hood, it used Vite and ESBuild to replace previous Webpack experience. But now this kind of Webpack and Vite ESBuild is optional. So we don't have to have an optional dependency in Webpack. We can kind of, you're able to have just Vite and ESBuild. Of course, along with the cool Angular DevTools for hydration, you're able to see actually errors. That little red drop or blue droplet will turn red, and you'll be able to get some information on what's going on with your component. So, oh, gotta click on it. There we go. What's next? Yay! Again, any art history folks in the chat. This is a painting for the art era and an art era. This is very Eurocentric art history, admittedly. It was actually quite interesting to do try and find images that would work for this that I felt would be appropriate for this kind of presentation. But this is a cool era that comes after one of my favorite European art eras. I won't give you the answer. You can see if you can check it out. Your clue is birthday cake. So what is next? We've got some really neat pieces coming, actually, that have been chatted about within the Angular, within Angular. So they've actually started prototyping partial hydration. They actually prototyped this on the stage at NGConf. So that's super exciting to share on this particular webinar. I will actually give the link for that as well, because I definitely think you should go check it out if you haven't seen the talk. It's posted publicly and it is super interesting. We also have, they're chatting about making root configuration even simpler, server root configuration, I should say. They are also working on signal debugging in Angular DevTools. This is the higher on the priority list is UI for inspecting and debugging signal-based components. And they're working on improving hot module reloading, which is super exciting. They're also chatting about evaluating Nitro support in the Angular CLI. Check out the NGConf 2024 Wednesday morning keynote with Jeremy and Minko. Do check that video out because they actually go over some of the other things that I've been chatting about and some that I haven't. Yeah, and then we also have two-dimensional drag and drop coming as well. This would be for the Angular CDK. So please check out the repository that we've given you a link to. And thank you so much for joining us. This was amazing to chat about this. I know I've been having a lot of fun with the new Angular Renaissance and the improvements that have come with it. So I hope you have a lovely day. And I guess we'll open it up for questions.
So there were two questions. One is, will on-push strategy still have an effect on zoneless apps, or is it absolute without zone.js? Yes. Mark, if you're using zoneless, like it by default is basically all your components would be on push. So you don't have to specify that basically. Yes, it become obsolete. Now, the second question is, how different is Signal to web workers for high availability computation processing? I wouldn't still use, although I haven't checked, but I still feel like Signals is browser based and web workers is still running in the background. So if you really have to do high processing, I won't rely on Signals since they are in memory. I will still send it to the basically webworker.js and do high computation and maybe send the results back that are populated in Signal itself. As again, as in every signal do you create is still in memory. So any other questions?
All right. So I know it was asked in the chat, private. I think I answered it live if you can see that. But this webinar will be up on YouTube on the NGConf webinar channel between 2 and 3 weeks. I don't know if Rangle will also. I'm not sure if you guys will get an email or not to try to get the downloaded copy as well. But if so, they may have it as well. But for sure on the NGConf webinar channel. Thanks for being here, Rangle team. It was awesome seeing all those high level looks at everything. It's pretty awesome. Hope everybody Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say on the demo side for internationalization and the pieces I chatted about, that'll also be included in the demo that Sumit's putting up. So you'll be able to see examples of that as well.
Yeah, so it will be on a different branch and repository. I will share the slide deck as well as the repository with everyone soon.
Cool. Perfect. All right, guys. Y'all enjoy the rest of your days or night if you're overseas. We'll see you next time.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.